Hello, ladies and gentlemen, on this Thursday evening to yet another stream about the topic international trade and globalization. This one is going to be a trial exam, so I have the pleasure to be the interlocutor again, and Natasha,
as always,
over there, good girl, has done so many A-level exams in her life now. She'll be the one to answer my questions, but as we have done a stream on international trade 2 weeks ago, I will first, or to begin with, I will point out a few aspects that might be interesting that we have not covered in the first stream, so might give you some additional information on the topic of globalization. So what you'll see now is a mind map that shows you some of the negative points of globalization and international trade, as these two terms are not synonymous but basically represent the same thing or are the same thing. So I'll show you this mind map beforehand. Natasha, for her exam, has the same mind map, so she'll pretend not to hear us or me. So officially you have preparation time now. There's light. Did I not switch it on?
Lamp.
Lamp. My English is terrible. Okay, can I zoom this thing? Zoom. I can. Fabulous. Okay. As you probably know, on such topics, there are a lot of mind maps out there on the internet that try to save you the work, basically, and present different aspects that are relevant for school topics like this one. 2 weeks ago, I talked a lot about the good sides of globalization and international trade, about all the benefits that it has for the consumers, that we have more choice, that we can go abroad and offer our services, our workforce abroad, and so on and so forth. So there are definitely a lot of pros, but obviously there are a lot of cons as well. And that will be one of the points that Natasha has to cover in her exam. As it could be an enrichment to the knowledge that you already have, we're going to go over a couple of points, the most important ones maybe, or the ones that I think are the most easy to present in an exam situation. Let's start with the environment. One of the major points of criticism, of course, the more globalized the world is, the more companies there are, the bigger the companies are, and the more outsourcing they do, the more environmental pollution there is outsourcing. So going to different countries or to other countries with certain parts of the business, maybe not with the whole business, but with the production or with the bookkeeping or whatever, is usually linked to the topic of environment, as many countries within the European Union, but also overseas and other countries do have laws or regulations concerning the environment that are less strict than the Austrian laws are. So the more multinational companies we have, the more environmental pollution there is, basically, or at least that's what critics say, because usually sticking to environmental laws is quite expensive, because it costs the companies some money to set up all the machines that they have and adapt the machines in such a way that they're environmentally friendly. If a country doesn't have a law, well, then they don't have to do it, so that saves them money, which is probably quite obvious. Capitalism, well, outsourcing is linked to capitalism again, or as well, I guess, as the companies always try to make as much money as possible and go to the cheapest countries where the production is the cheapest, where the workforce is the cheapest, and where the laws are not that strict, so that leads to capitalism, us getting, or Western world getting richer on and basically exploiting other countries like third world countries or China, Japan, countries like that, where a lot of companies go to because they think it's cheaper or because it is cheaper. And that leads to capitalism and to an imbalance in the powers. A shrinking world, that's what probably some people would say is a pro point, because of the internet we know a lot about other countries, we can do trade and we can do business with pretty much everyone in the world, we know everything about each other. So many people see that as a pro. It's really easy to get information nowadays, it's really easy to get in touch with other countries, with people from other countries, and to learn about the others. But then I guess there's also a lot of crime involved, like spying and the selling of like personal data and so on and so forth, which is facilitated by the internet, social media and so on. So I guess the shrinking world is one of the aspects that you could see as a pro and a con. What else do we have? Terrorism, of course. There are people who are of the opinion that the fact that we have opened the borders to such an extent that we have has facilitated terrorism, has made it easier to get into a country first of all, and linked up with the shrinking world and the internet and social media, it has also made it easier to like hatch plans and to like really conduct the terrorist attacks. What else? Brands. Well, yeah, we all have a lot of brands to choose from, maybe more choice than we really need. Ties up with capitalism, I guess. There will always be brands that try to be cheaper than their predecessors on the market. That could lead to price dumping. That again leads to lower wages and so on. So it's probably, or it's what some people call a vicious cycle. Exploitation. I thought exploitation is mainly about the exploitation of workforce, tying up with capitalism, but then this fabulous mind map has a shark as the image to go with exploitation, or whatever that is. So I suppose it's also, or it does also mean that we exploit natural resources to an extent that is not good. So exploitation of workforce, exploitation of natural resources, so as to be able to build bigger companies, build bigger hotels, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I guess that's it. Oh yeah, one point that you may have, like I think you also find it in your book, recognition and a hamburger. There's a system that is called Americanization. You may have heard the term. It's basically about the loss of like individual cultures. It's everything becoming Americanized, so fast food chains all over the place, Starbucks all over the place. Americanization because America was the mother of such brands, of such chain stores. Recognition, the English word for Wiedererkennung, basically means that individual countries in Europe especially are losing their like USP, the unique selling point. We try to be American, we Americanize ourselves and lose our traditions and culture, especially food as well. I guess that's why there is a hamburger. So for your exams you may want to look up the concept of Americanization, as it ties in nicely with globalization and gives you something to talk about as well. Okay. So, have a quick look at the mind map again. That's the same that Natasha has for her exams. Visuals are very popular in oral exams. It's either statistics or mind maps of some sort, because they give you a lot to talk about. The advantage of visuals is that you can pretty much choose what you want to talk about. So here in all these branches of the mind map, you could basically just simply select what you want to talk about, what you feel comfortable talking about, which is a good thing at the end of the day. Okay, are you ready?
Maybe you show them the exam first.
Oh, the exam, sure. That was an exam. Okay, the exam. As always, you've seen exams of that style before. In the right hand corner you usually have the topic, because you can, in the beginning you can choose a topic and that gives you a quick overview of what to expect. You have a situation, again a very popular one if the topic's about business and economy, you have to do a presentation in your economics classes, which does make sense. You've always been interested in globalization, international trade, outsourcing and its effects, and therefore you have decided to do a presentation on it because you're basically the expert on the topic. The individual long term is a speech or a presentation. It's defining terms again, which is pretty nice because you can draw on like the knowledge that you have, stuff that you have prepared beforehand. So there's a definition of globalization, international trade, outsourcing, the world as a marketplace, words that you've come across in your presentation time. Try to be as precise as possible in the exams, come up with a creative definition maybe as well, something that strikes your listeners as, you know, creative, and that also ties up with the situation that you're the expert on the whole thing. Inform your audiences about the pros and cons of outsourcing. You have a text on that, or Natasha in her trial exam has a text that deals with the advantages and the disadvantages. I'll show you the text in a sec. And you have the mind map to discuss. As I said, very nice because you have something to choose from. Be smart and pick what you know a lot about. The interactive part, so the dialogue part. The teacher starts, or you and your teacher start a discussion about the topic. The teacher, like, that's what teachers usually do, asks a couple of questions. The teacher criticizes you, or will mention, or will point out that you've only been talking about the negative effects or the negative aspects. So it's your task now, or it's our task now, to talk about the positive effects of international trade, with the aim to like get some sort of discussion going. How it can enrich our culture. Usually, as it is not an exam about business knowledge, this is a very nice topic because in the cultural aspect you can mention a lot of things like languages and traditions and festivals that we get from other countries, like Halloween for example, that kind of enriches our own knowledge, or can to some extent. And talk about the role of social media in international trade and globalization. Social media, also a nice topic. You can link it to whatever job search engines or platforms that get you in touch with other people, like connections that you need in a job and so on and so forth. So there's the interactive part is usually the part that gives you a lot of like leaves open a lot, and you can talk about a lot of things that you want to talk about or that you feel comfortable talking about. That's the text. Outsourcing, advantages, disadvantages. It starts with the benefits and also mentions a couple of negative points. Again, you can select what you want to talk about, and what is always important, if you have a textual, like if you have text as input plus own ideas. Sounds as if you were super prepared and know a lot about the topic. Okay, are we ready?
Yes.
So you are here to do your A-levels in English today.
Yes.
Would you please quickly introduce yourself and tell me what the topic is and what the situation is, please?
So my name is Natasha. I'm here today to take my A-level oral exam in English. The topic is international trade, and I'll start by making a presentation for you, my economics class, about all the types of and all the pros and cons about globalization and international work and business stuff. So I guess a few years ago we all thought that the world was so big and too big for one of us. Nowadays, this all has changed because we are way more connected to each other. The world isn't an unimaginable big thing anymore. We are now one kind of big community. This is called globalization. Everything is connected to each other. Every country is connected to another, and we are all kind of working together in our own marketplace, which is the world in this case. There are, of course, some words that are linked with this, like I said, the globalization, and all, which is kind of a synonym for the world as a marketplace. you trade from one country to another, from one continent to another, across the whole world. Of course, there are some other words which are, of course, known from all of you, as we all are in economics class, which is the international trade, which is kind of the expression to, which is the word to describe the way that one country sells goods or products, or maybe another, maybe also workers going from one country to another, which is called international trade. The countries are nowadays not only working against each other, but nowadays they're working with each other. Another very important aspect of this is called outsourcing, which means that big companies don't let people only work at their home country, but also in other countries. So this means that nowadays a company in Austria is able to employ people in Hungary, for example. And a lot of big companies do so. And there are, of course, some positive and negative aspects on this. Of course, a positive aspect is that nowadays big companies save a lot of money, because in some countries the wages of people are way below than, for example, Austria, which has very high standards. And also, if a company grows within the years, which is a normal process, or a process which every company wants, the bigger it gets, the more difficult it is for them to focus on what they wanted to do in the first place. You know, kind of like the core activity, which was why the company was started. For example, if you think of Swarovski, which was just a production of glass and little stones, it's nowadays way more. And by outsourcing, these companies are able to focus on their main goal. Of course, if you outsource people, there are also a lot of people who think they get only disadvantages of this, because people from their home country are not able to get a job at this company anymore, or it's harder for them to get a job there. And it's also that big companies kind of lose a bit of their power over their own company. Because if you outsource and employ people in another country, they have different bosses. Of course, in Hungary, the boss is not the same one as it is in Austria, which makes it very difficult for a company to decide things and to be on one level, because you always have a lot of people who need to agree on something. So I guess outsourcing is a very complex thing, which has many positive but also many negative aspects. And of course, globalization is all in all a very big topic. There are many aspects with the trade, with the outsourcing of people, with just talking about goods or workers. And there are many challenges which this brings to all of us. Of course, the first thing a lot of people always think about is the environment, because being able to get goods from America may be good for the people who want to get the goods, who want to eat the food or something like this, but just bringing them across the whole world is also a very big problem for the environment. And also it enables big companies to really get to be a monopoly, because if you think of buying something to drink, there is always the Coca-Cola company. No matter if you buy a Coke, a Sprite, a Fanta or something like this, it's always the same brand behind it. And I think this makes it very difficult for local brands to establish themselves, because of course the big companies are always cheaper, and yeah, kind of being in touch with them and trying to be at the pace of them is very difficult. And also, of course, people are always saying that it's kind of has a bad influence on the culture, because local products are kind of getting pushed away, and only the big international companies are the one who are able to sell things and goods. So yeah. And also, of course, which is a very important thing if we talk about globalization and outsourcing, is exploiting people. Because if companies are able to produce in China, of course they do so because the people there are getting paid cents, while here the people are getting €8 an hour. So I guess this is not really helping these kind of, well, it's helping the business of the whole country, the economics of the country, sorry, but it's not really helping the poor people. So I think maybe the next time you buy some Coca-Cola or McDonald's, just think about what does this do for the people who are producing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very informative. May I ask you a question?
Sure.
You talked about the variety of products that we have as something negative in that sense, or it was linked to the drawbacks of globalization. Do you yourself not enjoy the fact that you have so much choice? Like you have loads of, like, we don't really need to talk about really expensive products like mobile phones or whatever. That's not the discussion, I guess. But what about grocery?
Of course, I think it's great that nowadays you're just able to go to the supermarket and buy things from all around the world, like couscous and rice, which was, I think, a few years ago or 70 years ago. Try to get some couscous in Austria, I think it would be very difficult. So I think, of course, I mentioned a lot of negative aspects, but there are also very, very many positive. Because if there would not be globalization, I think our lives would not be this different and this colorful, because it brings a lot of new things to Austria, things that festivals or parties, for example, which were not here a few years ago.
That's definitely true. So you do think that there's, like, the presentation, the talk that you gave us sounded as if it wasn't all too nice after all, but you do think that they're positive?
Yes, of course. I think the main aim of my presentation was to get the people thinking more about what are they able to buy in the supermarkets, what do we buy? Do we buy the stuff from local suppliers or from big international companies? But of course I enjoy buying stuff from these.
Just recently saw Austrian Coke in the supermarket. Do you think that's linked to, like, the whole phenomenon that people are trying to, like, counteract globalization a little bit?
I think yes, because nowadays it's getting popular to rely on regional products. I think people realize that globalization is a good thing, which also can take a lot of things of a country's way of doing something.
Well,
and now people are trying to work against this and buy regional products, and so I think this whole thing is getting some attention and popularity nowadays.
Yeah, that's, as I said, I just recently realized that some place somewhere in the Oberland produces Coke now, so it was kind of like, oh, they're trying to be competition for, I don't know, Coke or whatever. You mentioned culture, globalization enriching our culture. There are some people who are very critical of that point, especially when it comes to language, because everyone says that, there's so many English words in the German language. Is that a good thing, bad thing? Would you say, too much English? And
I think it's both good and bad. Of course, it's bad if people are only able to understand kind of English words which are used in German, which is happening to a lot of young people nowadays. But I guess this way at least these people are able to learn English, because I think my parents are not really the best at English, and they're kind of limited to going abroad and being able to communicate with others. So I think in case of language, I think people have to pay attention to it, that people don't forget to properly talk German. But I think bringing English to our homes is a good thing. And I think in all in types of culture that a bit of enrichment from other countries is not a bad thing, because we also do the same thing to others. Because especially Austria and Germany, we have a kind of culture which is really interesting for Americans. I think with all the mountains and being traditional, and Oktoberfest, stuff like this, they enjoy stuff like this. And so I think it's not bad if we take, for example, an Indian Holi festival and do it at Innsbruck, because it's kind of like we exchange our cultures, but I don't think that we forget about our cultures. So
that's what Holi is probably, I think Holi and Halloween are really good examples, because some people really oppose it and say, like, that's, copying something that is not ours and not even making it really good. But I think first of all, I think it is good, and yeah, I think that's very nicely ties up with the enrichment of cultures. I think we are all surrounded by social media, but do you immediately connect the words social media and globalization? Like, would that go together in your head?
I think normally not really, but if you think about it, you realize that it all goes together. But if you say social media and globalization, I think personally these are two very different things. But if you think of Facebook and all the other platforms online, we are all connected to each other. And for now, for example, there are a lot of job platforms which I use, which I found on social media and which got me connected there, and where I got new people and new friends which say, hey, look at this and there and this. So I think somehow they go together, because especially if you think about culture, due to Facebook and YouTube and stuff, we all kind of find out way more about different cultures, because I don't know, I didn't know much about Asian culture before, but finding some people on Facebook and exchanging with them, this all enables a bit of cultural exchange.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Do you have a broad international range of friends on Facebook?
Yeah, a bit, because I like to travel a lot, and you meet people and you're able to keep contact with them, and so I think it's always cool if you see, oh, they're having this kind of festival or party over there. What does it mean, and what is it like? So I guess that's really interesting.
That's true. That's very nice. Some of my friends are kind of like, well, especially Facebook, always gives us the bad news. Like, I guess, bad news travel fast, and with the terrorist attacks in Barcelona, for example, like, I guess most of us got to know it via Facebook before we actually heard it on the news, because it's just the quickest way. Do you think that's being informed about such things basically in real time, like it happened and it was on Facebook, is that good or bad? Like, for you everybody sees it differently.
I really like being informed, but I think nowadays with all the big topic of fake news, it's a bit difficult, because you maybe read something on Facebook and are shocked or are surprised or happy about it, but you're never sure if it's really true. So you have to wait as a real newspaper, a big newspaper, confirm it. Right. So I guess it's something we have to pay attention to, because I think there are a lot of people who just read something on Facebook and think, oh my God, there has been this and that. And in the meantime, it was just fake news, but the people believe it. So I guess we have, be careful with it.
But in general, you think it's a good thing?
Yes, I like, getting notifications on your phone and stuff like this. It makes things way easier than just reading a newspaper.
Yeah, that's true. No, mainly because some of my friends are like, it's an information overload of bad news, really, at the end of the day. So I guess
think also that bad news are always louder than good news.
That's true. That's true. I think we sometimes tend to forget that there's a lot of good news out there as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure talking to you. So, of course, as always in such exam situations, Natasha, of course, passed with flying colours with a very good exam. A couple of things about the questions, about the oral exams as such, there are similar comments in other streams, so you may have heard that before. Of course, you have thank you very much, a preparation time of 30 minutes, so you probably would have keywords that support you in your talk. You're of course also allowed to keep your sheets, but then I guess keywords help for the structure, and you can also highlight stuff. So you would have flashcards basically with keywords, which is especially useful for the monologue part. Again, I think the monologue part is definitely the part that you can prepare. You have half an hour to prepare, maybe not half an hour because you have to think about the dialogue part as well, but then you're not really prepared for the questions that the interlocutor is going to ask you. So I would suggest use your time wisely. Defining terms is always a very good thing. What Natasha has done really well is the connections. And the examples. First of all, making connections between individual concepts and individual terms is a very good idea. International trade and the world as a marketplace are of course connected. I guess as the world as a marketplace is kind of a metaphor. It's easier to explain, and she did that very well, also linking the ideas, basically proving that she really thought about the ideas and the concepts, and she like in her mind tried to like relate them a little and also relate them to the real world. She also gave examples, which is a good idea as well, talking about companies that are traditionally of like one country, that we would always link with one special country, that are kind of a trademark of one country. Then saying, yeah, well, if companies like XY do outsourcing, does that take away from their status as like the local company? Is that harmful for the reputation? Whatever. So giving real life examples and discussing the real life examples is definitely a very good idea, because again ties up with what I said in the connections. You can prove that you have knowledge beyond of what the text says, basically. So you can prove that you made up your mind about more than just the A4 sheet that you have in front of you. What else did I do? There's nothing, like, she didn't do much wrong, so that was like not much to tell you really. You should definitely make sure that that's something she did exceptionally well as well. Make sure that you really answer the questions. Sometimes in exam situations, people are very well prepared, very focused on what they want to say in their monologue, but they find it then hard to spontaneously react to the questions. So make sure, as she did, to like really respond to the questions. Also, you can take a second to think about it. Like, that's how, especially in the dialogue, that's how a real life communication works. So don't be stressed, or don't get stressed out or panicky because you can't immediately answer. Take a second, think about it, but answer the questions. That's more important. That's how dialogues work, really. And that's more important than like only conveying the knowledge that you have. What else? Yeah, I think that was it. Yep. Final word, basically. Include own ideas, include own aspects. Prove to your audience, to the examination board in that case, that you really did do some preparation beforehand and that you know a lot about the topic. Also, if it's like, I guess at the end of the day, the globalization and the topic international trade gives you a lot of chances to touch upon various topics that you have prepared, that you know a lot about. It includes trade very much in general. It includes culture, it includes social media. So there's a lot of also exploitation, if that is a topic that you happen to know a lot about. Child labor, exploitation of workforces in third world countries, in developing countries, is a topic as well. So holds true for all the topics, not only for international trade. Also during your preparation time, also try to think about other topics that you know something about, that you could, tie in a little bit, so that you can leave a good impression to your examination board. I think that was it. Is there anything you have to say about the exam?
No, not really.
All good. Well then, thank you very much for listening, and good night.